Faces, we have sunshine again. It's not 95 degrees, which is a great thing. Introduce myself. My name is Brian Helmanack. I am our Assistant Director of Residence Life here at the University of St. Thomas. Welcome for those of you who are staying with us on campus. Your students are staying with us this year, and we're greatly appreciative of that. A couple things I want to say really quickly is that at the end of this session, we'll be breaking up into 3 groups. And I ask that when we get to the end of the question and answer period that you have some time. Make sure you listen. We're going to dismiss you by where you're going after this. The one thing I will note is for those people who have tours at 11:45, community tours, you're actually going to go into the residence halls. The one thing I need to stress with you is that you cannot be late to that session because the tours do leave right at 11:45. So if that means you do need to take some time during my session to go use the restroom, I will not be offended. So please feel free to take care of your needs as you need to. So what I'm going to talk about today in our Residence Life session, we're going to talk a little bit about who we are in Residence Life and what our purpose is on the campus, how we did our assignments process, how to communicate with roommates and how that situation may be different than what your student is used to, what it means to live on campus, what our meal plan system looks like, moving in, which is kind of the next big step for most of you after being here at orientation, and then how do we share information and communicate with your students who are living with us, and then we'll have some times for questions. So first of all, in our central office, we have 5 professional staff members who work there. Our director, Dr. Erin Mackey, who you've seen on probably multiple letters at this point. And then we have Carrie Feely, who's our associate director. Carrie really handles what I call the people issues in our office. So staffing, she deals with our RAs, which are our resident advisors, our apartment coordinators, our area and hall directors. They all report up through Carrie. Myself as the assistant director, I am in charge of billing and assignments. So that means that I have both of the coordinators, Erin Thigpen, our assignments coordinator, and Jean Kittleson, our billing coordinator, who assist and work with me on those 2 areas. In our residence halls, we have professional staff members. These are either master's holding individuals or people who are completing their work toward a master's degree in higher education. And in our men's halls, we have David Lemon in Brady Hall, Joseph Anderson in Cretin Hall, and Nate Peterson in Ireland Hall. Nate is an alum of St. Thomas and came back to us after his graduate degree. In our women's halls, we have Jordan Zardy and John Paul II, Kenise Evans in Dowling, Joseph Anderson and Grace, I'll talk about him again in a second, and Caitlin Herbie and Murray. Because Cretin and Grace are a little bit smaller communities and are located on our south campus, they do a lot of activities, programming, social activities together. So Joseph oversees that entire area. So both buildings, Cretin and Grace, are his responsibility. Assignments. On July 2nd, we all sent in the postal mail a letter that went home to your student. And that included where they were living, who their roommates were, their address of their roommate, and the home phone number of the roommate. Home phone number. So if they tried to text message it, it probably didn't do much. Or it could have made a very interesting message for the people on the other side. So be aware of that. Now, I know that most of your students, the very first thing they did is that they opened up their packet, they looked at the name, and they went to Facebook. We know this because admissions called me and said, why is everyone calling asking for the middle initial of Angela Anderson? We have a lot of Andersons on Facebook, obviously, so things like that. So although, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but remember Facebook has both good and bad aspects to it, and that they need to really be cautious on what they're seeing on Facebook versus what someone might really be like. So how did we assign your student to where they're located? Our housing system uses the deposit date, and I have that bolded, and I'm going to stress that piece, is that the earlier a deposit date is, the more likely they were to get into their first or second choice building. The reason for that being is that we do not guarantee housing on our campus, and we also see that a lot of people making late decisions, things like that. We don't say you are going to have housing. We're not required to have freshmen living on campus with us, just so you're aware of that. We then look at those building preferences, if they had interest in like the Catholic men's or Catholic women's areas. And then those 6 roommate matching questions is how we really tried to match them up. The reason why we only asked 6, and the reason why those 6 questions, is that we have our students identify to us what really made the most difference to you and how that roommate relationship worked in your first year. And yeah, it might be interesting that they know what kind of music they listen to or what kind of movies they like or things like that, but those 6 questions are really what our students identify as this really made or break whether or not we had a good situation on our campus and in our hall. 95.6% of our students get their first or second choice in housing. We are very proud of that fact here at St. Thomas. If you go to a larger institution like the University of Minnesota, that number will be significantly lower than that. So other things that came in that packet that may have some interest to you. So in front of you, you see you have a orange or goldenrod type sheet. And this is a piece exactly for you. And the one thing I'll point out on the back of this sheet is that you have a timeline of our housing system over the next 12 months. It's really important that you keep track of this mentally because your students may not always pay attention to what we're sending them for information, particularly when it comes to housing on campus for next year. Your students will have a very identical form to this, but it will talk about what to bring and what not to bring. It was a fluorescent green sheet, and we do have extra copies down at the info fair, so when you come see us, if your student doesn't remember getting it or you want a copy for yourself, please feel free to grab one. Also, information about bed lofts, and I will explain this as best as I can now, but please stop and talk to me more if you're confused or you have questions at the info fair. There are only 2 buildings that still need to consider bed lofts if they want to loft both beds in their room. Every other building is already accommodating for being able to loft if they want to in those areas. So the 2 buildings that still need to consider are in Ireland Hall on the 3rd and 4th floor, and then in Dowling Hall, it's every floor except for 5th floor. Okay? And what we're doing is we're slowly converting our system over so that we will no longer have to rent from bedloft.com, but until that time, unfortunately, it's a slow process as we purchase beds year after year. Information about bed sheets. A lot of Target, Walmart, Home Goods, things like that do hold extra long twin mattress or extra long twin sheets now. I advise you, if you have not gone through that process yet, it's starting to get a little late and they start to sell out very quickly. But you can order them through that company, and the nice thing about that is that some of that money comes back to us to program for your students in the residence halls. For supplemental insurance, many of you have homeowners policies that may or may not cover your students when they come to college. You'll want to talk to your agent or talk to them maybe about a renter's plan or something like that. This is just Allianz Insurance. They have a location out here in St. Louis Park. We work with them to be able to provide this. We've had very, very good success with this supplemental insurance, fast claims, very low deductibles, so something you may want to consider as well. Last but not least, on Sunday the 2nd, after your student moves in, we do a Target event. We actually get all of our students who live on campus onto buses. We bus them all over to the Target Midway. They have a lot of different events going on, and they're able to purchase additional things that they may have forgotten or things that they want to help decorate their room once they move in. For you, especially for those of you who like to do the shopping in your household, there are coupons that actually are good until the end of August that you can use to help save yourself a little bit of money preparing them before they come to campus. So as I said before, most of our students did this. They got out on Facebook, they looked up, they're really excited about who they're living with, and then that's not really what I'm looking for. What I really would like to see in this situation is that they pick up the phone and they call and they say, "Hey, you're living with me? Oh my gosh, that's so great. That'd be wonderful." So please have them pick up the phone and do that. And that really leads us into what we try to do on campus, particularly with roommate conflicts and roommate communication. During opening weekend, so after they move in, they will get a chance to sit with their roommate, and either the RA will be present or talk with them beforehand and give them basically a worksheet to be able to draw up a roommate agreement. And this allows them to set guidelines and rules of what is it going to mean for us to live with each other. Is the fridge an open space that we both can store things in? If I have food in there, can my roommate have some of that food without asking, or do they need to ask about everything? It's really important that they have some of those conversations, no matter how trivial your students might think they are right here, right now, but it tends to help alleviate some of the roommate conflicts that happen throughout the year. We also ask that our students communicate face-to-face. Every year, I hear from a parent who calls me up and says, last night, my daughter was sitting in her room, and she was on Facebook and saw that the roommate had posted X, Y, and Z about her. And so my daughter picked up her phone and texted her roommate, who was sitting back to her in the room, and said, please stop saying things about me on Facebook. Not the kind of communication we're looking for. It's important that they have those conversations, not do it through text messaging, Facebook, Instant Messenger, Twitter, whatever might be out there for social media. Instead, talk face-to-face. If that's not working, use a mediator. We hire our resident advisors and train them to help mediate through roommate conflicts and to be able to work through some of those issues, because whether they're minor or larger, and they can help them through that process. If that doesn't work, our area and hall directors are available for them to talk to and work through a conflict that might exist. Last but not least, I want to stress this, is that moving is usually a last option. The biggest reason for that being, particularly this year where we have a little bit larger of an incoming first-year class, is that we have very, very limited space on campus for people to move. Some of you may already know we are on an actual wait list for men. So I have men who are waiting for housing that I've still not been able to assign. There's also no guarantee that the space they're in now is going to be any worse than the space they're moving to. It may not be in their first choice building. It may be somebody who is a smoker versus they're a non-smoker. So please keep that in consideration. Have your students really think about the implications of requesting a move. So what does it mean to live on campus? We do not want Animal House. Our residence halls, some of them are pretty new, and we don't want to make them look not new by the end of the school year. So it's important that we would much rather have them sit in their rooms, sit in the study lounges, and be studying every night. Now, unfortunately, our staff is not going to sit there like Professor Snape and hold their heads to the books. Your students have some responsibility when they're here, right? And not only to have an experience in the hall with their roommate and be social, but also to live and learn in our environment. With freedom comes responsibilities, and for our students, they are getting a lot of freedoms very quickly. We have no curfews at the University of St. Thomas, so if a student wants to be out until 4 o'clock in the morning, that is their decision. But with that freedom comes a responsibility. And particularly, there are 3 issues with our code of conduct that I'd like to address very briefly for actions and behaviors. Those 3 are noise, visitation, and alcohol. Noise and visitation are pretty low-level violations with us, but also important, and we have some pretty set rules on what those means. For noise, we have quiet hours that start at 10 p.m. on weeknights, midnight on weekends. That means I really shouldn't be able to hear you outside of your room. For visitation, members of the opposite sex must be out of the room by midnight on weeknights, 2 a.m. on weekends. No overnight guests of the opposite sex are allowed in our overnight in our halls. There's a check-in and check-out procedure for our students for that. Lastly, with alcohol, I'm going to defer a lot of our questions to the dean's session later this afternoon, but what I can tell you is this. Every situation with alcohol can be a little bit different. And so sanctions can always vary a little bit based on that, based on the severity or the small severity of a particular situation. With alcohol, generally, in a very normalized situation, what we see is that there is a monetary fine, there's an alcohol education course, and a warning. Generally, on a second offense is when you all are notified. So your students need to understand that if they have 2 alcohol offenses, you're going to know about it. Now, we encourage the students to share that with you prior. Not all of them do, so be aware of that. A very severe first-time alcohol offense could result in your notification as well, just so you're aware of that. with responsibility for self and items. Not only does that mean not staying out till 4 o'clock every morning, but it means making sure that you lock your doors when you leave your room. And not losing your keys, not losing your ID card, things like that. It's really important that if they do lose those things, they let us know right away so we can help maintain the safety and security of their items in the room. Locking the doors, it happens every first week that they make sure they need to take their keys all the time, because they will be the student who walks down, takes a shower, forgets their keys, and their roommate leaves and locks the door. Walking around with a towel to get someone to let you back in is not a very good experience for most of our students. So very important that they hang on to those things. We also have card swipe access into all of our halls. For those living in a particular residence hall, they can swipe in 24 hours a day, not a problem. If they're going to visit a friend in a different hall, they're able to swipe in starting at 10 a.m. and they're not able to swipe after 8 p.m., just so they're aware of that. We ask that they really watch tailgating. And parents, I love you all to death, but sometimes you are the worst tailgaters in the world because you have no other way to figure out how to get to your student up in the building. Please make sure that your student comes down and meets you and walks you up, because we don't know who you are necessarily. And it's really important that we keep all of our halls safe and secure. Lastly, really quickly, we do have a service from Public Safety that will escort students from one location to another and make sure that they get there safely. So if your student has a class in Brady Educational Center on South Campus and they need to get back up to John Paul II Residence Hall, it's 9 p.m. at night, it's dark, it's the middle of the winter, Public Safety will help them get there. They'll call in, say, hey, I would like an escort. They'll have an officer come down and make sure they get to JP2 safely. That's also within 6 blocks of campus, okay? So it's a really good service that our Public Safety does, and that is 365 days a year. Really quickly about meal plans. There's a lot of information here, but I'm going to try to sum it up quickly. First and foremost, many of you received a letter that said that the Flex Dollars was not what it says up here. That was my fault. I apologize. These are the correct numbers. The Flex Dollars have increased for this upcoming year. So be aware of that. We have 3 meal plans. And I always recommend, we have about 65% of our first-year students who are on the Block 150 meal plan. I always recommend starting as low as you possibly can, because you cannot drop your meal plan lower after the second Friday of the semester. You can always increase and just pay the difference in cost. So it's really more economical to start low and add as you need it versus going ahead being on the highest meal plan, and then if you only eat 180 meals, you eat the cost on those additional meals. It does not roll over semester to semester. So if it's a use it or lose it system. If they don't use a meal, they don't get to continue it on for spring semester. Meals can only be used here in the View, student dining room, the bins on South Campus, and Food for Thought over in Minneapolis. We talked about that. We have a lot of questions always about Flex and Express. Deb Ammon, who will be at the Taking Care of Business session that's on your schedule here for 1:15 this afternoon, she'll talk a little bit more about what Express is and where that can be used. Just remember, with Flex Dollars, those always come with the food plan, Flex Food. You can't add Flex Dollars. You can always add Express Dollars. Okay? Like I said, Card Office will also be at the information fair here right after this session as well. Move-in. Saturday, September 1st. Please mark it on your calendars. We would like you all to be here. You will get information sent out probably on the 6th of August is what we're looking at now to get that out to you. That will come with a parking card. You get 1 parking card per student moving in. One thing I'm going to say about U-Hauls and trailers. 2 things. First off, the size of most U-Hauls and trailers are bigger than most of our residence hall rooms. Too much stuff. And remember, there's probably 2, 3, or 4 of them going into that same room. Also, if you come with a truck or a big U-Haul or a trailer, you will not be able to get down close to your building, and you will have very little assistance to be able to move those items. So please be aware of that. Your best interest is to not bring those items at all. Also remember, we have this Father Deese Move-In Crew. We have about 400 volunteers every year, students, parent network members, faculty, staff, who all come volunteer their Saturday to help move your student in. Remember, everything you move in, we can help you with. When you move out, you're on your own. So be aware of that. And they like to accumulate many, many things throughout the year. So what they're bringing in is not just what's coming back with you at the end of the year. So early arrivals. Athletes are really our only a population that are able to arrive early on campus. The coaches will be following up with their move-in dates, and then we follow up as well out of our office with specific times and locations. So that should all be coming out here within the next week or two as well. So just be aware of that we do have some groups that are in early. Communication. We directly communicate with our students, and that's mostly done through email. And email is our official way of notifying students of things going on. So if we need to do something in a residence hall with electrical one day and power's going to be off for an hour, we will let them know that. If we're getting close to room selection time in February, they will receive a lot of emails about, hey, it's time to sign up for housing for next year. If you're interested, go to this link. We can help you out. We also post a lot of that on our website. Many of you have seen and used our website. We also use Facebook and Twitter, more to share some general information, have a little bit more fun with it. You are all more than welcome to follow us on either of those as well as parents, because we do echo a lot of what we put in email and on our website on Facebook as well. The parent newsletter comes out monthly from the Dean of Students office, and that will give updates on campus events, information. We usually put information about breaks coming up and how to make sure your student can be here or not be here for that break. Also room selection, things like that. Lastly, as I said before, we love our parents and guardians of our students. But if you are going to call me, particularly with a concern, a roommate issue, things like that, it is vital that you let your students know you're calling me. The reason I say that is because if you call me up and say, my daughter, my son is having a roommate issue, and I want you to fix it. First question I'll say is, has your daughter or son told anybody about this? Well, no. Okay, I can't call your student up and say, hey, I was sitting at home last night watching The Biggest Loser, and all of a sudden I thought, I think this student's having a roommate issue. They're not going to believe me. So it's important that they start that process first. If you feel that a process has stalled or that they're not getting the assistance they need, that's the perfect time to call us, because then we do know about it and we can work with the students on that. Really quickly, what our Residence Life website looks like. On the left-hand side, you'll continue to find information about first-year housing and applications. There's information about bed lofts out there. Both your sheet and the student sheet is out there as well for you to download and look at. When we get to January and February, you'll want to be watching the returning student housing application and timeline, and that's when we update that for this upcoming year. Really quickly, our Facebook page, just so you have a sense of what it looks like. So, that being said, we have some time for questions. What can I answer for you? Way in the back.
What did you say about Dowling Hall and the loft?
Yes. So in Dowling Hall, if both students want to loft their beds, every floor except for 5th floor would need to rent one bed loft through bedloft.com. Except for 5th. Except for 5. There you go. I can see the confusion now. Ireland, its floors 3 and 4 should, if they want to loft, need to rent one. Yes.
What does bed loft mean? I have no idea what that
Sure. So in our, and you'll see when we get downstairs at the info fair, we actually have a visual so you can see this. We provide in almost all of our halls either a loft system or a bunk bed system. So in the floors that I'm talking about, if they want to loft, be able to loft both beds, they need to rent an additional loft to be able to do that, because we haven't converted our entire system over yet. Okay, way in the back first. Extra long twin mattresses is what we have on our campus. That is correct. Standard. Yep.
I'm a little bit about security more. I know you talked about the cars getting them back and forth, but what about just general walking?
What I will say is that we are on an urban campus, and what our Director of Public Safety will tell you this afternoon is the exact same thing. We have a very beautiful campus, and when you're sitting here overlooking our quad and our new fountain and everything else, you can think, well, what can really go wrong? Unfortunately, we start in an urban environment, so if they are within 6 blocks of campus, it's night, make sure that they're traveling with somebody else, don't travel alone, make sure that they also, are using that service as needed, so. Great. Yes, white shirt.
I have a question regarding the alcohol. Why couldn't you notify the parents after the first violation?
I am going to defer that to the Dean of Students office this afternoon, but it is the policy of the university to only do it on the second offense. Okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
Do you tell the students about the communication with the roommates?
Yes, they actually, on the front of their green sheet, has a whole thing about the keys to communicating with your roommate. Now, how many of them read it? We'll see. Now you have something, homework for them tonight when they get home. It starts already. Other questions? Yes?
Our son is in the temporary non-assigned.
Yes.
Will we find out anything about that?
You can stop and see us at the info fair. On your actual tour today, you won't see that type of housing. However, we can show you an example room of that at the end of the day today after all the events are done, if you're interested. Dates for assignment will probably be next week so we can get them out. We are doing a little bit of movement here this week, and so that's why we've held off yet on still sending them out. Yes?
So when they lock, if they want both beds locked, they only have to pay one fee for that?
Correct. And you'll see when you come to the info fair, I'll show you exactly why that is. The question is, do you only need to pay the one fee for the one loft? And the answer is yes, because we are able to convert the bunk system that we give you into a loft and then just have the other loft as a rental. I thought I had another one here, but the hand went down. Oh, thank you.
Our daughter's a little bit older student and going to be living, I think, in one of the apartments. Will
Yep.
there be a separate information sheet on that?
Come see me at the info fair, and we'll talk then. Okay. Yes?
Computers, do they require Windows operating system, require a Mac operating system?
For computers, I'll have you talk to the bookstore for sure. We are both. We have both Macs and PCs in all of our computer labs, and our accessible and IRT will work on both of those on our campus. I think we are probably still more of a PC campus. However, that's probably getting really close to 50-50 now with our students. So, yes, go ahead, follow up.
And my daughter doesn't seem to be she needs to lock a computer on the door.
So we are talking about, back to the locking your room and everything else. They do make cable locks for computers. We have had people use them before. I highly recommend that anything, even if you want to bring like a small safe for valuables, things like that, that's something that really I would necessarily encourage if you feel that that gives you some more safety and security, but it really is a person-by-person decision. Yes?
So does St. Thomas have their own police department? Maybe that's not the right word, or is it the city?
We have our own public safety department, so they are not a full police force in that sense. But they are all very extremely well-trained officers and are able to assist in any emergency on campus.
So if they have an emergency, how is it handled?
Yep, so if
Do they do call 911?
they don't call 911, and they'll talk, I think they talk about this afternoon as well, but there is actually information numbers that they can use for that. So.